We're going to talk about different communities that you're going to engage with: techies, animation, photography, exciting things. Yeah, so I hope you've all had a chance to walk around our store. You've been able to see the exciting range of stationery products, of the technology items that we have, and you've also seen this is the home of books. As this is Central Africa's biggest distributor of books, we're extremely excited to be able to come back from the difficult COVID space that got us in a space where we could not be able to meet face to face. So we're extremely excited. So I'm seeing Jane. So Jane will come and welcome us so that then we can be able to start our session. Karibu Jane.
Good evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to our store. This is Textbook Center, our flagship branch. Next door you find almost everything you want in books, stationery, and technology. So you're welcome to browse after the event. Today's event, we're just trying to debunk all the questions we have around the international curriculum. I would like to tell you we have most of the books. In case any of this runs into a challenge, we've got our staff that is very well conversant to the category. So we have Emmanuel. Emmanuel is a team lead in charge of the category. We have Jessica, the sales assistant in charge of that category as well. Then we have a few more staff that will be able to assist you across. So if you have any question, please reach out to any one of us. And if you have any question, you can reach out to any of our staff members, and they'll be able to direct you to where your questions will be addressed. Once more, karibuni. For the panelists, we are happy to have you. Please feel free. We want to learn much more from you as well. So karibuni.
Thank you very much, Jane. Just to our shoppers as well, we are extending a warm welcome to this session. If you're shopping and you'd like to come and engage on the subject of CPC, any kind of international curriculum, just to understand what is the space of special education, even as we discuss both the different curricula, you're welcome to this session. I would really like to sit here and attempt to introduce this fantastic panel, but I will not do justice. So at this time, allow me to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. They're passionate human beings. They have extremely deep knowledge in their areas of specialization. They love books. They're friends of TBC, and that's why they're here. And they're extremely
just here to serve and change our children's life through education. Last but not least.
Good evening. My name is Clifford Olwatch, and I wear several hats. By daytime, I am a principal at Reggie School. I've been in education, that sector for 32 years, uninterrupted. By evening of my side hustle, again, education is I rescue, integrate, rehabilitate street boys in Westlands, Parklands area through an NGO called Homeless of Nairobi, something that we've been doing for the last 8 years. I am a passionate reader, published author, and very, very committed to education as education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We can't wait to feast, right, from all that experience. At this juncture, I want to acknowledge my colleagues, Textbook Center staff who are present. Our head of retail is at the back. Joy, you can wave. Yeah, so she's the one who runs the Speak Engine. We have Riska, our head of e-commerce as well. Yes, and lots of others who are present. So feel welcome to this panel. just to start us off, I'm going to read a post that was written in 2020, 14th November 2020, by Wendy Enjoya, she's an educationist, just to be able to provoke us as we start. She says, so a student of mine wrote a paper on her schooling experience. She started with 844. Then the parents took her to IGCSE, because you imagine this IGCSE is a place, yeah? So she was proposing to talk about the advantages of both systems. I really hate that advantages and disadvantages model of thinking. But as a good teacher, you then don't say it directly. Clifford, is it true? It is, eh? You have to help the students see the absurdity of that kind of thinking. So in our conversation, I asked the student about the advantages of IGCSE. Thinking, should we see the problem with advantages and disadvantages? Clearly that didn't happen, eh? So advantages of IGCSE, as you'd expect, the obvious. The system allows you to think, is what she said. It teaches you to voice your opinion. Then I asked, how about the advantage of 844? The answer, sit down for this. Luckily we are all seated, yeah? The advantage of 844 is that it does not allow students to develop their own opinions. I didn't see that coming. I asked innocently, what's the advantage of that? The student explained, 844 tells you what to think and drills you on it. And that's good because in university and life, you have to know what the right answer is. Coming up with your own idea doesn't work or count. By the way, the student wasn't being sarcastic. She hadn't figured that there was a contradiction. She genuinely thought that being creative is a waste of time. She was saying that life is easier when you just do think. For the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to say to this young Kenyan student. After a while, I said, maybe you could look at it as a disadvantage of IGCSE. It teaches people to have opinions in a Kenya that doesn't tolerate thinking. From the mouth of children comes the truth that I hopelessly tried to explain to the Kenyan cowardly middle class. The choice you have to make is not between the education systems your child will attend. It is between your child's freedom and an oppressive Kenya. And you keep choosing the latter. And then you confuse your children by taking them to systems that teach them to be free thinkers, while you say nothing about the way Kenya punishes people for thinking. Your kids see the truth better than you do. End of post. And that opens up our conversation this evening. Is IGCSE what we call IGCSE? Because let's call it international, yeah, school. Is it better than our local school? And I will take this to Clifford. Today's topic, we really have technology issues, so that's why we're trying to share a mic. But please bear with us.
Thank you very much for that. The answer is no. The whole purpose of education is not to compare systems, to compare students. The whole purpose of any education system is to form a human being. So IGCSE, 844, CBC, all those are they're actually tools to an end. I normally say that those are shoes. They don't do the walking. The walking is done by the feet. So the only thing about whatever one day has written or whatever is on the, should I say, on the ground right now, is that 844 reached a point whereby it was no longer about even passing exams. It was no longer about that. It was about stealing exams. Right? Because we have very many systems in the world that are still very exam-oriented. Most of the third world are very exam-oriented because that's the only way they know how to poverty. But the death of 844 came with now it moved to an extent. It was no longer about the A's. It was just about how the integrity of the whole exam. And that's what one day is talking about. Once the integrity of the exam is compromised, the integrity of the nation is compromised, right? And to go further, I'm very apolitical, but I'm going to make this statement. Once elections are rigged, then how do you stop people from stealing even the exams? How do you stop it? That became our culture. And so when CBC came in, And for a long time I kept on saying, you don't even need CBC, all you need is to remove KCP. If you remove KCP, then Kenyans become like chicken without feathers. They become naked, because they don't know what to do. It's like, oh, from standard 1 I know there's KCP, now they remove KCP, now what do you do? What do you do? You don't know what to do. So that's the first thing that they needed to remove. But in a system, in a country, in a position whereby you're just surrounded by lack of integrity, you're surrounded by defrauders, left, right, and center, how are you going to tell someone not to steal the exam? So at that point, we had lost it. So back to the question, is IGCSE better? Maybe it's better structured than CBC, than 844. But I don't think it's a better system, because to me, we are talking about the human being. At the end of the day, whether that child moves from Turkana to Nairobi to ISK, it remains a human being. All education systems have to come into us as a human being. So let's not compare. Thank you.
Excellent question, excellent answer. And we are being told that it is better structured. Yeah, so that's what we're hearing. Maggie, maybe you would, as the curriculum expert, just give us some insights. We are told that the new curriculum, CBC, is a competency-based curriculum. What does that actually mean in terms of the curriculum design? Just very generally.
Well, I think, competency-based curriculum simply means that you're training a child to be competent at something. And usually, we would say we are training a child to be competent at reading, competent at, at the skills, the 8 or so skills that have been put forward to be able to train. Now, I think slightly differently about how people develop competencies. Because I think that competencies are developed once you have already learned other things. Like you talk about competencies when you are in college, at a higher level. So because perhaps of how the curriculum itself is designed, it sounds really nice. I mean, it's actually a very good way of thinking, but it is impractical, in my opinion, for children. Because sometimes the children are not able to think. I mean, how do you maintain a child has actually reached competence? At what level do you say that? So that perhaps would be my only misgiving, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's not possible. Although, of course, in a few nations it had been tried and it didn't work very well, so then they moved back to something different. But competency for young children is a challenge for anybody who even has a child at home. They're able to tell that, I'm not able to tell whether the child has actually reached competency in a certain skill. And of course, we have ways of measuring that, approaching, above expectations, exceeding expectations, and all of that. And it's a bit fluid, so I feel like it's better when you're talking to an adult and ask this engineer, are you competent in being able to handle that system, or something like that. But really, I think when you talk about competency based, you're simply asking is the child competent in the skills that they ought to be competent at a certain level. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that response. And even as you go on, then we're reminded that the grade 3 exam, I think, was sweeping the market. Yeah. And a lot of parents have felt that they have been taken back to school. Maybe some of them are here. Those CBC parents, they are very bitter parents because they walk into our store every day trying to look for an easier way out, including, can you guys help us sweep the market? Unfortunately, we can't do that, but so we are going to be engaging with them shortly. Sylvia, please help us understand, because especially this, take us to the world of special needs, special education, because this is an area that a lot of parents struggle with. And how do you even identify if my child is autistic? And I know the signs and symptoms are quite different sometimes for different children. Where do you get support? Where do you start? How do you decide even the schooling, what curriculum, where? Just If there's somebody out here who's really confused at that space, please help us. I know in summary, I know you can, this is your area of specialization and your heartbeat and you're really passionate. But just help us do that.
Thank you very much for that question. So first we'll start with what is, she said, spectrum. The full is autism spectrum disorder, which means that it is very wide. And one thing we say, if you meet an autistic child, you've only met one, because there is none that is equal or the same to the other. So you will find there are 4 areas where you have socialization, differences in how they socialize, how they learn, the environment, that is the sensory integration also, and delayed milestones. The first key thing that a teacher will see, or even as a parent, the identifier, there's something we call steaming. Steaming will present itself in many ways, which is a way an autistic person tries to adjust to the environment. So the environment is overwhelming for them. So they develop a habit so that they can cope. They will either flap their hands, tiptoe, rock in the chair, and one of the very common things you will see is lack of eye contact. And you'll find most learning institutions, even at the house, the household setup, we find ourselves telling them, look at me when I'm talking to you, you see? But you see, they're struggling because the way an autistic mind is set, in the spectrum, there are those who are able to narrow down and focus and do more than one activity. Because when you're talking to me, I'm listening, I'm thinking of an answer, I'm thinking of how I respond. Those are 3. Most of them will find will have a limitation of like just 2 or 3 things they can do. I'll either listen to you, understand what you're saying, and think of the response, or I lose my eye contact with you. So if you force me to look at you, I might not be able to respond. So you're also adding to my stress level. Right? So you find that there is a lot of comorbid conditions. This is coexisting conditions that an autistic person will have. You can have autism with epilepsy or convulsive disorder. Epilepsy plus also ADHD, ADD or AHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That child that a teacher will say, you cannot settle, they don't listen, you're forever moving and fidgeting and touching. It's not that they want to, it's just that they cannot contain the amount of activity that their brain is processing at the same time. And also remember there is a characteristics of autistics that they have 360 vision. For you who's able to focus and listen to the teacher, this child can see everything going on. So if you move there, of course, my attention will shift and I will see that. So there is that aspect. And why we say it's a spectrum is because when you're looking at the criteria of how to categorize autism, you will find that maybe someone has very high sensory integration issues, someone else, which even in sensory now, it can be hearing, feeling, tastes, it's a whole wide range on its own. When it comes to communication, many are non-verbal, so you will find a child who is not responding to you. It's not that they can't hear you, it's not that they are stupid. Their brain just has difficulty processing speech. And as much as we take them for speech therapy, if the brain is not reading, it's just not reading. So alternatives of how to teach them also varies in this area. And that's one of the things that we're lacking in our system. You see, sign language interpretation is something else that's an alternative. We have PECs, where it's picture exchange. And this, you see the difference between how the British system and our system is. For us, we just do verbal communication, right? There is body language, then there is sign language, and then now there is the picture. If you develop even an internal communication as a household, it makes it easier for them. Then there is the thing we call tantrums. They are not tantrums, they are meltdowns. This happens, imagine you're an adult. You can hear, you want something, but you cannot communicate. Imagine yourself in that world. How would it feel? Like I'm trying to say I need water, but I can't say water. Maybe I've not been taught how to point, but they communicate by guiding. This is where they hold your hand and take you to what it is that they need. So if you have not learned their way of communicating, they get frustrated, they start screaming, they get violent because you also get frustrated, you shout at them. So it's a spiral if you do not get to the level to understand what they're going through and try and support them. So you will find there is where we need even the community. Then we have something that's called also escapism. This is where the children will just dash and disappear. you know, so you find a lot of missing children. It's just an impulse that is uncontrollable. And most common. The learning is very different. We have visual learners, tactile learners, and audio learners. So in a school, you need to be able to identify this child is more comfortable and more receptive to either of the three. So then that means, as for things like, let's say, blocks, we take it for play with any other typical child. But for that child, that is helping them with cognitive skills. This is where you're communicating, your brain and your heart can coordinate. And you will find, for example, my son who turns 12 tomorrow can't color doing that. A circle, you say it's a circle. But it's just because that coordination, fine motor skills and gross motor skills are not being developed. That section of their brain is not developed, and you cannot push. He's been in school for 9 years. He can still say at least 3 words and some, but then that becomes something that is very hard, and that's where therapy comes in for their fine motor skills. So play is also one of the things. They learn things like turn taking, right? Then if it is audio learning, that means if you put music, they can be able to sing along, but they can't talk. But they will sing along. There are those ones who have very high photographic memory, right? That they will see and they will copy. You find a child who can't talk, but if they are echolalic, which means they repeat words, they can come home and repeat everything the teacher said, or just wake up one day and start saying anything, but it's things they have recorded and they've had before. Or you find like they can read, you think they can read a book, but if you read a book to them, they've seen the page, they know what you're going to say. So they can just flip that page, repeating exactly what you said. Then there are those who are tactile, where it's about texture. So they learn best by touching and feeling and taking it in. And then you find those ones who are sensitive now to things like light. So the environment in which you place an autistic child is very, very sensitive, and it affects the input that they get. And even the hyperactivity that we face, and that's why we say in their classrooms, it needs to be very soft. No high shelves, let them be low, let them be lockable, let it be plain. You see in other classes we say, let the walls be all red, green, all those colors. For them it needs to be one color. Because you see all that, it can even be a trigger for someone else's conversion. Because you see when your eye changes, there is that color change that your brain processes. So it can be overwhelming an environment, and you find this child is just having a very, very hard time taking in your classes. And also socialization, you find that an autistic child will just be wandering and doing things on their own. It's not that they want to be on their own, but they're just more comfortable that way. But when we're talking about when you bring integration, when you encourage them to participate, then they'll be able to learn that social skill. But you find that those also who are very social. So when it comes to the class setting, and I'll go now to CBC, just to touch on the CBC, and where there are those who feel CBC is good for special education. This is about when we're looking at how the grading is. I can speak now as a parent. I remember the first time, because it's a journey, no one gives you a map. You just go in, you're trying to figure out, first of all, the minute you're given that diagnosis, you're lost. You don't know where to go, which school, which curriculum also. And then you put your child in school, then the first exam that comes, and everyone tells you your child cannot. I remember the first time I just cried. Because when everything is, zero, cannot, it just kills your morale. But for us to appreciate the activities of daily living, this is the thing, it is a subject. How to battle, how to brush your teeth, how to comb your hair. Those are the things that they learn in school, so that they're able to be independent. Remember, they're very dependent, depending on where they lay on the spectrum, which you said is very wide. So in competency-based, now for us it's an advantage because my child is shielded, their self-esteem is shielded from being compared to a typical child. So you're judging them according to what they can. And this is where IEP comes in. This is individualized education plans. Yeah, so that is one of the key things that we need to adopt in our special schools. As much as we're integrating and looking at them at what they can do, let us give them what they can at their own speed, and that way we'll be able to get the best out of them. And then if you find out that this is where they thrive, let's focus on that. If you see books is not their thing, just change how you do it, make it entertaining, and if class is the issue, just shift the location. Even outside, you find when you're taking things when they're in a more environmental friendly situation than when they are struggling to take in all these other challenges in the environment. Because environment, that be it social or physical, is one of the greatest things that affect students with special needs.
Thank you for that. Let me just add on to just the structure that I was talking about, the difference between IGCSE and the local curriculum. At the IGCSE level, especially year 10, so the year 11, they do their O-levels. Students who have learning difficulties or challenges, whatever you have to call them, are allowed to sit special papers, right? They're allowed to also not do certain papers. So if a child has got extreme learning difficulties, they can only do 2 papers or 3 papers. The ones who have got difficulty with writing and coding, as in reading the paper, they're allowed to have a second. Yeah. However, you must have a doctor's letter, a specialist letter, kind of learning. To them, it's not about the grade, it's about, let's say, the achievement at that particular level. What can they do, right? Now, the others who have, should I say, hearing problems, kind of, they can have subtleties. You can have someone read to them. So all this has been taken care of in terms of structure. And then finally about structure as well is that the papers are done twice a year. So if you miss one, you can wait for another one, or you can, should I say, sometimes book for a special and do just on that particular day. So it takes care of that. For our system, it's one size fits all. So and that's why we have all these expectant mothers doing exams in the maternity ward, because there's just no other option out of it. We have all these children who are getting E's, and we don't know what learning difficulty they have. We just don't care. It's like, okay, fine. That's a paper, you sit it. And again, it takes care of the extremes. Like in certain subjects like maths, you'll have advanced maths at all levels. So the ones who are again gifted. It's not only the ones who are so the ones who are gifted, they can sit for a higher paper. So that's a structure that I was talking about.
Just to add on that, just remember we have other categories of learning disabilities, and identifying it is one of the challenges that we have. We find a child will be punished for the rest of their lives, yet it is a disability they have. This includes dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. If you see that they're having those challenges, they need a support in class, or extra classes and shadow teachers who can continue and take it at their pace for that specific challenge that they have. And they're given that amount of time. Actually, for our system, I think when they're sitting for KCPE, they only get like an extra 1 hour, which might not be sufficient for them,
Itching to respond. She asked a question that she didn't clarify. How do you identify that your child is in the spectrum or has dyslexia, or So we have milestones that are set. I would say set because it's the way we've been brought up. I know my child, by the time you hit the age of 10, you're supposed to have walked, you're supposed to have been walking and talking, and giving some words, mama, papa, and all that. So for autistic children, I would say, or the spectrum children, the specific things you can notice. You'll hear pitch for a sound, they cover their ears, Then you'll find them switching the lights on and off, and then trying to figure out what is happening, So when they see it's different, then you'll see their emotions. They start smiling, they start, And then when it comes to communication, like she said, fine, they will be in a position to hold your hand and direct you to where it is, but sometimes they'll just go and stand there. So it's you to come and ask, or rather try to figure out how to get to know what they want. Is this what you want? They will nod, So for me, I will say the Kenyan government has really tried. I won't talk much about CBC because as a parent, I just decided not to do CBC for obvious reasons. Because I realized for an autistic child, dyslexia and all that, you realize their P will be opposite. Their T will be opposite. So when a parent goes to have a conversation with the teacher, then the teacher will be like, your child is slow. you know. But for them, there's what we call a sand tree, you know. If you give them a sand tree and then they keep on, you know, they keep on drawing their teeth, and you tell them, like she said, you need an aid, and then you draw it this way and tell them, follow these, and then they do it, you realize that they keep changing. And the beautiful thing about it is when you realize the spectrum, it never gets worse, and it never changes. It's there. They learn to keep up with what they get in their area of education and all that. What I will say about the international curriculum that ventured into, they really take care of them. Their sensory is about touch, it's about seeing, it's about listening. So their teachers have been given that, I'll say, more information on how to detect what you need to be dealing with. So to be specific, like my daughter is very good at touch. You get? So if you tell them, touch and see. So when they say this, they've touched this. This is a triangle. You know, they feel it in their hands. So that is what Montessori, in terms of international, is supposed to be like. So you feel it. This is a triangle. They get to see it. You know. So when it comes now to putting it down on paper, already the connection is there. There is the touch, there is the feeling, there is the see. So the drawing comes out. You know. So I think that is where our government, in terms of CBC, is not getting it right, I would say, because those the children in the spectrum, the truth is, cannot be mixed with the other children. That is the truth, because they feel like they can't keep up. So that is where now the tantrums come in. You know, that is now where they now set themselves in a corner. You know, you see someone tells you, my child just loves sitting alone. There's nothing like, there's no child who loves sitting alone, by the way. That all parents you need to know. There's no child who loves sitting alone. There's no child who would love to play alone. And then the beauty about the children in the spectrum, they form the best relationship that you'll ever think of. When it comes to their friendship, once they grasp a friend, like this is my friend, like they make the best friends that you can think of. And to understand them, as parents, we need to, like she said, we need to come down to their level. If you come down to their level, communication in the house becomes so easy, you know. So all these, the government has tried to register the children through the Kenya Institute of Special Education. You get me? So I think the government really tried, but I think to transition them now after registration and where to take them is where I think CBC maybe will come in, or that is where now the government needs to figure out.
Thank you very much. Those are, what insights, yeah? And it feels like there is need for a bigger conversation in that area. Because even as distributors of books, sometimes we struggle. When parents say, what resources do you have for children doing special education, then we're a bit stranded in that area. So those are really good insights. And also just giving us an understanding of the differentiation in the different curriculum. That's also important for us. The other thing that has, it's become exciting, especially since COVID, it's become popular, people are talking about it. Homeschooling has become a big community now. And for some of us, just the thought of sitting and teaching your children is scary. But it's something that a lot of parents are adopting, people are opting for, and a lot of them are walking into our stores looking for different resources to support them. Some of them go for the hybrid model. Maggie will help us just understand, take us into this world of homeschooling. How do you, we respect you very much, one, for even just going that way, because you can imagine what that means. But we're very interested just to understand, how do you, which curriculum, where do you start? What kind of resources, which books? We are parents who went through it for foremost of us. Where are the exams? What did my child score, right? A lot of us will ask that. So please help us understand this one.
Wow, so I think it's a very interesting place. Usually homeschooling is just, it's just parenting. and just taking one day at a time, every single day. So anyway, perhaps I think my story is easier to share rather than talk generally, because I think many homeschooling parents have different stories of their own, why they began homeschooling and why they didn't take their kids to school. But I think for me it was, I was looking for a space for my children that would be more dynamic than the classroom that I went to. And I went to an electrical school, and we proper nice boarding school with all the dynamics of what that looks like. And I think by the time I was beginning, which was I think 2000, what I forget, I was wondering how do I help my child have a better education than I did. And I thought I came across a few parents who were homeschooling two of them. First I thought, of course, this is ridiculous. Why are you not taking your child to school? Are you Celtic? Something's wrong with you. And but then I went to their house and observed them, and I'm like, wow, this looks very interesting. So when my children were born, I kept postponing that day to take the child to school. It's 3. So now I think I should go to a kindergarten, and I kept thinking, no, let me stay a little longer. So it was 4, and I was thinking, my mom is asking where your child was going to school. I didn't have an answer. But when they turned 5, I had to take them to school or start schooling. So anyway, I just went into a store of someone who was selling curriculum, and I came across a preschool curriculum. So he's 5, of course he's late, thinking about how long he should be reading. But I remember meeting that lady in that store, and she told me, no, 5 is actually a really good age. A child will take a very short time to adopt and all of that. So I took the curriculum home. I took about 4 or so months to look through. I had never learned phonics. What is that even? Why is it not an A? Why does it have 4 sounds and not 1? It was confusing, but I thought I was very committed to, I just knew I can do this. Let me see. Of course, when I tried, my son was just looking at me, like, what are you even saying? And I remember one of the things that I would tell him to trace an A, because that curriculum said don't let a child write until they're 6. Like, okay, fine, let's do this. So, and he would do something like this on the air, and I'm like, son, please, you need to read, or I take you to school, somebody to help me. But he was about 4 and about 8 months at that time, so I thought maybe when he turns 5, let's do some magic, so I stopped. And by the way, there was magic. He turned 5 on the 23rd of February. I took up the A and he could choose it. And that was the beginning of schooling. And so I learned how to, antelope for us. I don't know, the ape, and there's another one that is, you can't spell, but it's an antelope or something like that, And then you have emu, and you have elephants, and you have all of these very interesting things. So the curriculum was very friendly, so it told me what to do at what time. It's 12 p.m. now, it's time to take a snack, that kind of thing. And I had never done any teaching before. Like I told you, I was a banker, so I was doing consultants and handling ATMs. So, but it was a very interesting world, because the first time I was very patient, because I was wondering how can you get it? Why can't you see it? I can see it. But I was encouraged by the fact that he began to pick something. And I remember one of those days, the lady who saw me the curriculum asked me one time, how long did it take you to teach potty? What is hard to teach? Parents know what is hard to teach. And he told me, so you taught potty, so you can teach A. I thought, okay, I can teach A. So anyway, many, many years later, my son's in high school, and we've done this for the last many years, followed by his sisters, who followed him very closely, one year after another. And it's been an exciting journey. So when I began, I just took a curriculum that was complete. First, because I didn't know much about schooling, and I wanted something that was a bit packaged. I could tell me what to do. So I told this is grade 1, so at grade 2, the child should be able to read. At grade 3, this is the reading level, so get some books, something like that. So I took something packaged, something clear, for the first about 5 or so years. But by the time we were 6, I kept thinking, now I think I can venture into this jungle, you look for things that are a little more dynamic. So that's when I dropped most of what I was doing that was packaged and brought in something different. So usually I'd pick an English curriculum written by someone from wherever. I take a Singapore math here, math's no problem, lots of internet resources, and something like that. Now, what was most exciting for me was that first I did not have to put my child, especially because they learn very, very differently. You know, these are very different from the same mother, they eat the same food, and I don't understand why they don't behave the same way. I may just be one person, so I have one easy job. But it's not the same. So I have 6 subjects, I have 3 students who run so differently, at different levels, and every one of them will need my attention. So certainly now I had to know, this son of mine cannot read for himself and understand the content. I have to teach him, his auditory has to hear. But I have a daughter who, when you read, they ask, Mommy, can I just read for myself? You're making too much noise in my ears. And I leave them, and they're able to do that for themselves. But I have one who just moves and moves. You think they got it, then you ask a question, oh, that was in that context. So, and all of them are simply interesting, and it's been a very interesting journey for us to know them, to learn how they learn. I have made many mistakes, but eventually, I think we are at a point, 10 years, 12 years later, where I can tell this is how he learns, this is what works for him, this is what I can do. So, as for exams, I have assessment. Of course, every model you pick, just if you pick an IT book here, it will have an assessment plan. So that's exactly what I would do. But then the other thing I do is to try and see whether I'm at the level I should be. So once in a while, I pop into a Kenyan local textbook center and I pick an English math, like I was just behind there looking at what they're teaching grade 6, then I'm like, this is what we do today, I'm good. Yeah, so, and I think that, first of all, where I can't, like, so one of the things I really insist is just understanding of concept, so I don't move to the next until you get it. And I have a very high standard for percentage. If you don't get 80%, you have not understood. We are repeating that concept until you get it. Now, unfortunately, it's a lot of work, but the other thing is that I can tell you that they have understood. I'm sure this one they have understood. This one they didn't understand. But now, what about exit-plant? You can just finish. So once we get to, so now we're pressing, so we have picked now a completely different path to be able to clear school, And so we picked one particular package where the child is now assessed doing a particular program where they will get a high school diploma once they're done. So, and that combination of learning has been exciting because then you're able to pick the best from every corner and then be able to have one place where it's a meltdown and you're able to have a nice exit plan. And the beauty of it is that each and every one of them can have their own exit plan, and that's exciting because then you don't have to fit in a certain program for us. I think really in a nutshell, summarizing a long, tedious, difficult journey in just a few sentences that perhaps questions would have.
So we'll be able to ask questions once the session is done. Just for clarity, Clifford, we would want to understand the different international schools use different curriculum. So we have Aga Khan, which does IB, International Baccalaureate. We have other schools that do EdExcel. Then we have Cambridge. Then everybody, the local speak is IGCSE. So what exactly is IGCSE? What are these different curriculums that I use? Are they similar? Are they different? Is there any that's better than the other? Just help us understand that.
Thank you very much. I think when I started, I said we don't compare education system. However, the difference comes. Let's start with the examination bodies. That's where the first difference comes. Even within the what they call the English curriculum of the British National Curriculum, GCSE, General Certificate of Secondary Education, international version, right? Then they have different bodies as well. They will have the Cambridge, they'll have the Excel. There's another one.
Thank you.
The 11 and the 13. Yeah, there's Pearson, but there's one I'm looking for. But it's a very difficult one. I think all the schools avoid it because it's hard, but you'll find the typical British schools will go for that one. I don't remember the name. So at the end of it all, even for them, is the kind of secondary school that you're going to go to. But A is going to determine what kind of exam that you're going to write. With the IB, of course, American St. Mary's, ISK, and I think now McKinney, I'm not sure. Nairobi Academy is joining the fray. The Vale School has joined in. So IB is growing. And the reason it's growing is because of its approach, which is inquiry-based and project-based. So it's very broad. And there's something they've introduced which is very interesting, where the student determines what they want to learn. And that's what I was coming to, that one of my biggest beef with homeschooling and streamlined schooling is that the child has got no scope of defining at all. The timetable is set for them, right? The exams are set for them. Even the report from IB has a scope whereby the child writes comments on their own report and they review it the next time. So of course, these are different ways. And of course, you have the nationals, the French school, you have the German school, you have the Swedish school, all those according to the expatriates that they have around. I'm just interested, kind of that on that. We don't hear of Zambian school, we don't hear of South African system of education. In Kenya, we don't hear of that. And the question is why? Why is it that the third world, kind of, everyone is left to struggle on their own? Then when all these fancy, nice systems come, then we jump onto them. Once upon a time, it was the ticket to universities abroad. And that's why the popularity came. Should I say, with the IGCC, because they go up to A-levels, and it gives them that time to choose subjects and to narrow down on the path that they want to take for their careers. So it's easier that way. So if they take sciences at A-levels, then definitely I'm going to science-oriented. They take arts, it gives them that time. And also at A-levels, then they've got the AS levels and the A-levels. So if you want to go all the way up to A-levels, do Form 6. If not, so that scope is that. And I think that's, should I say, is the biggest difference in that you have all this latitude and time to think and to choose. It's not one size fits all that you have to go that particular way. So because of that, it has made it, should I say, a little bit more popular and comfortable for most people. However, I have to say that, should I say, 844 also churned out gritty, resilient people. Those guys are taking hours and hours and hours of oh. And even if you're told that you don't work smart, if you want a good, it's it. They can work and they can take in a lot of research and this and they can the slog. Whereas your typical IGCSE, IG students will be your smart fellow and kind of almost lazy, project-based, wants to work with others, cannot work alone, kind of looking for support, Yeah. So if you get a good marrying of the two, and I think that's what CBC has brought in, it's kind of a marriage of the two. It's a local system, but borrows heavily, I would say on the international system, but more on the IB. Most of the inquiry-based learning and the competencies are derived from IB. And that sweeping of the market that you're talking about, again, is meant to be a project-based learning, but because of our 844 approach, it ended up being an examination-based approach. So it has given it that kind of, should I say, edge, because the 844 parents whose child is in a CBC wants the child to have more homework, to have more notes, to have more exams and everything, and that's why they'll come into here. They'll ask you, is there a book that talks about the market? Yes. Yeah, and then do you have, I mean, like now you're going to grade 6 national assessment. So do you have past papers? And of course, it's revision. And being a very, I mean, Kenya has been very, very creative and very, very innovative. By November, you'll have so many revision books of grade 6. Yes, count as you being one of them. And we moved away from traditional publishing. So these books can be channeled very easily. I mean, yes, by anyone. I mean, River Road is thriving and everything, and even if it's poor quality, it will sell because it's just revision. So you find that coming out because that's what we have known for the last, since 1985, when 844 was introduced. We've just known exam. So it will take time. I normally say that it has to do a cycle. 844 started going to the dogs when 844 students were being taught by 844 graduates. That's when things started going wrong. So CBC will, let's say, take its roots when the CBC graduates start being taught by CBC graduates. For now, it's going to be a confusion and a marketplace and everything, and we need that. In the process, something good will come about it. Yes. And for me, again, as I've said, it's not IGCSE, it's not IB, it's not CDC, it's not German system, it's not the French system, it's not the Belgian system, it's not all that. It is the child, it's the individual. As long as I'm teaching the individual, and that's what she talks about, homeschooling, she's not been teaching any curriculum, she's been teaching her own kids. Right? That's what she's been doing, and there's no curriculum for that. I'm sorry, that's the only curriculum that there is, teaching the child. Once you're teaching the child, okay, then you're a perfect educator. But if you're teaching a curriculum, if you're preparing them for an exam, if you're talking about assessment, then you're in the wrong profession.
Let me say something before I forget. One of the other hats I wear, I sit in KCB academic committee. I don't want to, but just to look at CBC from a different light, in the side of a special needs parent, to say no advantages but disadvantages, but let's look at the gains in terms of children who are not able to learn typically. So the other thing we need to do, especially for special needs children, is teach them how they learn, and not force them to learn how we teach. And the thing we've seen in the market space right now, people like this handiwork, plumbing and stuff, like, soft skills, they can't even begin to start fixing it. Yet me and a person, I don't need to be told by anyone. I look at it and figure this joint. Remember that art class for German? And fix it, And when we're going back to this bridging of this gap, what it also assists in for us, especially with children, is when we're looking at the path of integration and inclusion. Because the other question maybe I can throw at you, how do your children get to socialize with others? Because for special needs, in this new system of integration and the CPC, you find they will have their special needs classes, then part of the hours of the day they are in the regular class. How that helps is our children are still part of our community. We put them in a special class at a corner. They will not exit to go to a special life. They're supposed to live with the community. So what this does is they're able to understand other people, and it gives an opportunity for others to know that these children are also different. So these people who are integrating, informing, and understanding each other, you find when you become a leader, at the back of your mind, you remember there is a special group of persons that require special accommodation. And that's what we want to do. Leaders who are able to think in a 360 form of inclusive environment. So what you're being reminded is what is important to the child. So
There's no curriculum that is better than the other. So they're different, some are structured, not so structured. We have been reminded that CPC borrows heavily from the IB system, which is an inquiry-based learning approach. So, which is great. So that's a question that has been asked by most of people have reached out to that question, so I'm glad that it's been answered. Just to help us understand, Maggie and Linda as well, just support. When you're in typical school, you find that you're part of a community, a support group. I know I've had talk of communities around homeschoolers. So where people maybe just, sometimes you're just in your own world, as you said, it could be quite a lonely world. Yeah. So you sit, do you have a group, a community that you're able to tap into, sit and meet up and share notes and just, is there something like that?
Yeah, so one of the things certainly a child, like they're saying, a child learns in the community. In fact, the best way that a child learns is cooperative learning, when they are learning from their peers as well. So one of the things that we've had for many years, these communities have changed, others have left. So we have a particular community of probably about 15 families with 4 or so kids averagely. And so we meet on Monday from like a school, we meet somewhere, some church in the city. So we from 8 to about 4 p.m. So now what we do in that community is that we have picked different learning areas where we think that the child needs to learn with the other children. For instance, when I teach literature, I think that my child learns literature better when she can read a literature text with another child and be able to discuss that literature text in a group setting, or history, or debates, or things like law and all that stuff. So when we meet together as parents, everybody picks an area where they feel competent to be able to teach other children. So we have different multi-grades, and one of the things that, of course, we also benefit from that is the multi-grade learning, where a child is in a classroom of grade 5 with a grade 8 child. And that, by the way, is very important, because also a child is able to learn from another child, and another child is also feels responsible for the learning of another child, which is simply learning and building community beyond yourself. So that community meets like that, and it's a learning community as well as a community that goes beyond learning in terms of we do our own community projects, we go to a library somewhere, read for children, maybe in a school or something like that. We were doing other things together, like play and hand in the world, stuff like that. So that community itself, first of all, which is very important for me as a homeschooling parent, is that it's not a play community, which is usually very common for homeschooling families, but it's also a learning community. So a child is able to learn with other children, and they're able to do things that cannot be done alone at home, like planning in teams and forming up, something like that. And that community certainly metamorphosizes depending on how our children are growing. Some of us will exist. So most of us use different curriculums when we go back home, but when we meet, we use like one. So we use one learning set. So I teach history for grade 9. Someone will teach writing for grade 5 or something like that. Now teach your child, you teach my child, and you will take care of my child for that week, for that learning area. But then there are other learning areas that I have to do at home.
Maybe you could help us understand like what curriculum your child uses, how did you select it, and especially the resources that you use. Do you also just do you use a mix of online and just working resources that you find useful? How exactly do you select your resources?
Child, I actually chose the Montessori way of schooling, and then I gradually want to go into Waldorf. Waldorf is German, because for them it's about the way a child is growing. Your child is not being told that by the time you hit 6, you're supposed to be doing A, B, C, D. about, and here I am, this is what I can do. So the assessment is just about them as an individual. They don't have exams like the way the rest have exams for everyone. So for them, they don't have exams for everyone. It's exams for an individual. So according to this curriculum, she's been in a position to attain to this level. So she's given her own exam. During graduation, actually, they graduate on the phone because as you proceed to the next stage, you can still continue learning. It doesn't mean that learning stops because now at this point you could not achieve this. So now you will remain behind like the 844 system is, you repeat. No, for them there's nothing like that. If you were in a position to achieve in terms of what you can do as a person, and they put it at they don't give percentages actually. For them it's about they're implemented, they're achieving, they're still learning, it's workable. So if you can achieve and then it's workable, proceed. I mean, learning will come. I mean, the rest will follow. Being the excellent person will follow. Then you will study and all that. Now at this point, you cannot proceed. Then the reason why it is about this, like she said actually with Waldo, the child starts writing at this age of 6. You know. So in the early stages from 1 to 5, it's about playing, it's about learning the colors. So they're given artwork to do. And I think that's how they come out to be the best artists, so to speak, because you're not told to draw an apple. You're not. You're being told, here is the mat, here is the paint, draw. No. So some come out drawing their family, what they did over the weekend. Someone else is drawing a flower, someone else is drawing a house, someone else is drawing, so at the end of it all, then now they sit and discuss what they've done. And then what I like about them as well in terms of their curriculum abilities, they have special duties. So today is about Thanksgiving. So this week, the whole week, you're given lessons on what you can give thanks on. It's about the grammar, so it's about, so I can give thanks to this, I can give thanks to this, so they grow fast with acceptance, getting to understand everything that happens in the environment, getting to know what the sun is about, because like you said, they're given freedom to question, so if they, by the way, students who come from IGCC or IB or Montessori or Waldorf, all those are different systems, by the way. When they come from there and go to 844, your child is seen as, how can I put it? Reader. Actually, that is the label they're given. It's a reader. Because for them, it's about, they can't come and sit and then you teach. They have to question. So like in science, the other day I was telling some parents, my child can give the types of muscles. Reason being, for them they have a PE lesson. It's not about going outside and playing and running. Now you're told, come here, it's 400 by this, and we need this number of people. And for them, you start by learning what is this about. Why are people running different races? It's because someone can take a marathon, another one, it's the different structure of the body. So from the different structure of the body, these are the muscles that we look at for someone who does a short distance running. This is what we look at, So that is why by the time they finish, let's say by the time they finish the year 6, when they're doing their examination, someone understands all this. Their science is so different. So if all this comes in, then to me I realized to be specific, the reason why I'm here is for the spectrum children. I realized the spectrum children are not well we understand that some schools that have up to 100 children. So when you're dealing with 100 children in a specific class or a setup, and then here comes you have around like 6 who are autistic or who have dyslexia, or who have the attention deficit syndrome. So then now becomes an issue because basically it has to be taken with a pace. So for me, what I would say is for CPC to achieve, to take care of our special needs children, they need to, there is need to size down the classrooms. I don't know how that is going to happen. And I really hope she answers me that because I think for the parents who are in the CPC curriculum and the children cannot be taken care of. Because what normally happens with the children with, in the spectrum, if you don't take care of them, they sort of like stagnate. Okay, so they don't move. And then so what happens? The child is still there. So as a parent, you get frustrated. So we end up now having our children. If you realize, for those of you who come across the parents who keep their children just in the house, the kid is just in the house and they want them. So what's the problem? The kid is just wondering how can they do it? It's because the teacher could not take care of them. The parents has to struggle and feed the other kid. So what happens? This child just gets into the house. So I think that is what I can say. And I would like her to answer the bit of yes. So that's what I can say.
Okay, so I will combine all my heart and put it as disability mainstream advocate. So first, CBC has its pros and cons. We look at the typical school setup in Kenya. You have a special unit. Special unit, depending on which school, depends on which disability. So you have the ones who have visual impairment, hearing impairment, autism, MH, mentally handicapped, although it's not a word that needs to be used. Yeah, it's intellectual disabilities. So those are the special units. But the sad situation is with the current state which we have, we find public schools, we have to split public and private schools in this case. Most of our public schools, yes, they are overcrowded. The international standard of our special schools should be 2 teachers to 5. We are at 2 teachers to 35 plus. So most definitely, especially this child will not benefit from them. But you find looking at our economic sector, let's be factual. The economic status that we are in, I can only afford, I'm looking for that free education. And that's what will take me to a public school because I cannot be able to afford. What is the current special school fee? 100,000, 80,000, 70,000. First of all, the challenges that come with having a special needs child, one of them is keeping a job. I have to take this child for therapy 3 times. If God forbid, they need occupational therapy and speech therapy. That means the entire week you get fired. You cannot be taking all those days off. Yeah? So you will see that as much as that is what they can afford, the teacher-student ratio cannot be accommodated as of now because, of course, there is the TSC issue and special needs teachers issue. Because there is the need for the person who supports the child with the activities of daily living. That is the one who will help with the children who are not toilet trained. You need to have someone like that in the room. And then you have the academic person, and then when they are hyper, someone else who can handle. And that's what we do not have of our education section cannot afford to currently have in public schools. That's why they're doing the integration. The why I said there is a positive is the integration. You find that those people who there are those on the spectrum that are able to cope in a regular class. But then there are those who cannot. So they remain in the special class, but they get the opportunity to socialize. So they get that life skill and the other skills that they can gain from their peers. Right? But then now when we go also to specialization, where we are saying it is special school, remember I mentioned the fact that they will still have to go out to the outer world, which makes it very difficult for them. And we're not getting a lot of output in public schools because of that teacher is not able to identify this child. And we give me someone who has severe cerebral palsy and someone with autism in one class, and they all learn totally different. Because remember, a child with cerebral palsy, you have to learn also which type of the 5CP is their fault. If it's a child with Down syndrome, what are their challenges? Because you will find that a child with DS will also have visual impairment. Then there will be that aspect of intellectual challenges and also the financial skills. So it is too wide for us to say that the government can actually handle it. They're just working with what's there. And because a parent cannot afford, you find they are stuck with what it is.
Sorry, there was an act for the with special needs. What I'm not so sure about is how, because I remember there was a session for the parents, like you said, for the occupational therapy and the speech therapy, they have to do it like 4 times or 5 times in a month or so, in a week, sorry. So there was an act that was taking care of that. Because what I can say from the analysis that was done, because in Kenya, you have to register for KISE. If you have, you don't have to. Okay, so National Council, after the therapy and the letters have been given by the doctor that for sure this is the case we're dealing with. So I think with when you register with the National Council, there's some
So for the education system, what is advice after you get your diagnosis? This is where the doctor ascertains if you are autistic, you have Down syndrome, you have a learning disability. Then where KISE comes in is education assessment. They support with education assessment to see what is their style of learning, what level, can they survive in a regular school or they have to be in a special school. And that is also handled by EAC centers, which is early assessment centers. And then now from there is now where the National Council comes, that is so that you get the disability support as a child. And when you talk about policies, actually our country, sad to say, is one of the best policies, but that's what we're good at. Signing and writing policies and not implementing or appointing people who will ensure that it is implemented.
Thank you very much. I promised I delivered, right? We said this was a wealth of knowledge and information. Just as a disclaimer, the views of the panelists are personal views and not the views of textbook. So it's just a disclaimer. I will open this session just for a very short Q&A. I think I'll take 3 questions. 3 questions. If you're audible enough, I'm afraid we have technical challenges.
Okay. So my question was, we are talking about my niece is my niece is she has CP. Let me tell you, I've come to this center looking for anything that can help that child. I've never found it. So I don't know, maybe I have that, and then also I can get to learn like where we can start with her because she's 5, and now I'm even confused like what school we take her because the special schools you're talking about is where all kids are lumped together. You don't know whether the child has problems, and because sometimes she convulses, I'm scared she might, she's exposed to things that can trigger that. And
I think we'll take 3 questions, then answer them together.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Clifford, for that. I'm a producer of international but TBC is like, I love TBC. I do work with KAC because that's what I know from where. That's why I was smiling when you were all talking. I'm a coach as well. I work with naked women and women as well. This is something I love TBC. Why? Let me give an insight. I'm a coach. I train teachers, of course. I work with children from international curriculum. I was the principal of my school. That's why I share such a beautiful relationship with them. Guess what? I'll come and look for local books. Because as much as it's structured, I feel like at times it's too structured. And the children don't associate with some of the terms they use, some of the places they mention, for example. Because this is an international curriculum. At times for me to explain how in geography a habitat works, I need to come and look for local geography books. Because they don't understand. It's not their country. They're foreigners. And my question only to us is this today, that as much as we all, I love the homeschooling idea, it was so brilliant. I do know it has its pros and cons like everything else. What my question related to the question is today. CBC is not the problem, curriculum is not the problem. The mindset The curriculum is being made by teachers or educationists who went through 844, not for international curriculum. But we want international curriculum standard. It's going to take us at least 7, am I wrong, 2 generations? Right? Let's not blame the curriculum for everything. Trust me, I've worked with ministry directly. I am actually in religious education. That is my specialty, but I do work with life skills. I do work with all the other integrated subjects. Perhaps the other issue is we're all informed parents with different views. If we could all put our efforts together, whether it's CBC, whether it's IGCSE, whether whatever, we can make it work. But do we really spend time with our children? No. That's why homeschooling for me, what the ladies are doing is amazing. They could talk about their children, which most of us parents can't. Right? So the other question I do have is, if we are lacking in that education system, what more can we do? What more can TBC do for us? Because for me to teach a Cambridge child, like I have grade 5, learners are going to go to grade 6, we're worried our curriculum changed overnight. Technically is aware. All of a sudden, next year September, this year September, next month when the children go to school, we have a new animal to deal with. The base is not there because COVID messed us up. We did have online classes, but we were messed up. I am now using local books and Pearson books to get the base right. So maybe, as I said, for me it was a command and maybe it was my way of contributing. We're on the right track. We are on the right track. And TBC has everything. Let's integrate. Let's integrate with the law that we can learn from it.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. For the many comments and questions, we appreciate that. We mentioned earlier that TBC is more than a bookshop. Yes. And what you're trying to do here is build a community, build a family. We want to hear from you. We want to work with you. We want to journey with you. We want to be here for you. We want TBC to be home. Yeah? So that's what you're doing. This is the inaugural TBC Connect, a platform where we want to have conversations about pertinent issues that affect us. And this is critical. So we are hearing parents, when she starts saying, parents can't talk much about their kids, and I don't want to end the day like that. I don't want to, because we know it is right. So can we take one more question or comment?
Hi, thank you very much for all the information. For me, I was wondering as a beginner, if my child has not yet gone to school, I didn't get a definition. The one thing I picked up is I've learned that CBC is project-based, inquiry-based, but I've not heard what is CBC. And also for the international curriculum, what is it? I've heard of checkpoint exams. I hear the national exams. I really don't know. So for me to come to your school or to choose a particular curriculum, what should I, as a parent, so even maybe for future, maybe we talk about world of edX or Pearson, all those, where we could even log, we could have a website where we have all that information. But just shortly, because I came for CBC and IGCSE, I want a breakdown. What is it? How many subjects are there? Will my children do 2 subjects? Will they be 10? They will graduate with what? Define to me, before you comment, I want to know what we are talking about.
We'll take the last question, then you. Oh, still one more. Okay, we go, then you.
I am here as an English teacher, training teacher. Now, I'm happy that I found somebody who is in the city. Now, my question is a comment and a question. My question is, being in the homeschooling setup, I school 844. I'm now doing the what we call the international curriculum homeschooling setup. How do you help a parent who is coming from an 844 system, wants to switch their child to the international system? How do you help a parent who is now in the international system, who wants to now switch back to the 844? Because it tends to become a confusion. They're not sure they're in classic. This other system, we call it CBC. This other system, we call it maybe 7 or 8. This other system, we call it high school. This one, we call it lower secondary, junior secondary. They are not sure where to start. So how do you help such a parent? And also, thank you very much, Tech Center, for this organization. I wish we'd be having this every other day. Thank you.
Your wish is our command.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacinta, and I am a tuition center. And I actually requested Joyce. Yes, Joyce. We need to have more events like this, as I'm always here every day buying books. And also, because sometimes, for example, I have dyslexic kids, and these parents don't know where to get special teachers from, and they're confused. They come and tell me, hey, just listen, how I know. But once you sit with them and talk with them and tell them and explain to them how you need to have therapists on board, speech therapists on board, actually they start understanding. So I was looking into a way in which we can be involved. And that can work out.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your question, your comment. Thank you for coming. And we're happy to continue engaging with you. I will ask Clifford to respond to most of the questions.
Right? Okay, so let me take the one of transition. If the child is 7 years old, then according to our structure, it should be in grade 2, I think. So that's one thing that we look at. The other thing that we look at, which is very chaotic, because the children at the international curriculum are kind of like the September academic years begin, has given them sometimes one term advantage. So if the child is on the younger side of the class, they'll end up 1 year younger. So sometimes it's confusing. So what we look at also is which is your last class. And we won't make you necessarily repeat for the sake of the age. If you're 5 years old and you are in grade 1 and you come to us, we will move you to grade 2 because you've already done grade 1 generally. However, there are few exceptions, the children who come and cannot fit in, so we have that conversation with the parents. We had to move a few children down because, as we said, IGCSE is very project-based and inquiry-based, whereas the local curriculum is very heavy on content still. CBC is still very heavy because we say the teachers are not just transition. So it's, at the moment, it's still murky, and the last 2 years have not made it easier because we're in the middle of realigning the curriculum and this. So that counts. That's number one. Then what is CBC? What is Waldorf? What is IGCSE? I mean, as I said before, I really don't know. I really don't know, kind of. And I always don't want to be drawn into that space. What I normally tell parents is, if you have to take your child to a school, the several factors you have to look at. The younger they are, the closer to where you live, you should take. Proximity is key, it does not matter. Yesterday I was having that conversation. I'm saying that a child who starts schooling at 10 has no disadvantage at all. Or a child who started schooling at 5, there's no disadvantage. You take like 1 year to catch up completely. That's number one. Number two, anyone who has driven a car, doesn't matter whether you're giving Mercedes, a Volkswagen, and what, the skill that you have, the driving skill is what determines. It's not the car. Now, CBC IGCSE, all those are cars. Right? The skill which is reading, writing, I know when you grab in my family, I am the first person in my family to go to a nursery school. All the other guys went to standard one straight. But because I was the youngest and I was the last one, my father said, "You're not going to remain home. Talk, get out." And I was shipped to nursery school. And you know what? How many years? 1 year, just 1 year in nursery school. All the other guys started learning or whatever in standard one. Right now, many years later, is there a difference between us and them? And what did I do in nursery for that 1 year? We just sang and played 1 whole year. I went to standard one, I could barely read. Just played, kind of, right? I'm not sure, and confirmed reports say that in the Japan system, they start at 7. The kids play. Okay? So, if you're looking for a school, I don't know where you live, just look for the nearest place that your child will go and start. Okay? Let them have fun. Much later, they will have to struggle with many other things, examinations, homework, projects, I don't know what. Let them have fun. But having said that, then I think she started by saying CBC is competency-based. They look for competencies, right? So to me, the competency, quality-based, the skills, all these are just, should I say, fancy words. But at the end of the day, comes I don't think we came out worse because that was the only style of learning that there was at that time. As they developed, they came up. In fact, the other day I was telling you, I was giving a project to the teachers. I was training teachers and I told them what to find. We have to look at the vowels in the story and then make a table and a pie chart and everything. And I said, okay, guys, okay, A, E, O, U, look for that and then get it. I was corrected. Also, there's no there's no O, there's no U, there's no I. And I was like, okay, what is it now? I can't remember. What is it? Exactly. So they've changed that. They've changed that. And whatever it is, I don't understand it. But I don't think it has an advantage over what we have. It's just like a fashion statement that at this particular time, right? It's bell bottoms that are there, so we'll go to bell bottoms. 10 years from now, I won't be shocked if we go back to IAEO. I won't be shocked because they keep on going cycles like that. Back to the point that it is a skill, the reading skill, and how the brain is going to decipher that skill and decode is not going to change. So at the end of the day, again, proximity, the other thing was the cost of the school that you take your child, and you think of the long term. If you start in IGCSE, then are you going to have the 13 years of school fees, knowing that you can get a second child and a third child, and you'll be able. I've seen parents who move their kids somewhere midway because things change. Okay, so what is CBC, Waldorf, Montessori? There was something about beginners and Montessori. I can't remember that. What was it? Someone asked about it. Sorry? Yeah.
First for CP at 5, it depends with which type of CP, which part of their mobility is affected. That's what will help you on deciding how you can support. Remember, there are those ones whose mobility is less, there are those ones who can speak, there are those who can speak, have zero intellectual impairment, there are those ones whose hands are the ones that are challenged. So the first thing you start is depending on which one you start with therapy. Therapy will help you with the mobility, so that when you're touching, it's tactile, they're listening, their attention, they'll be settled down to be able to pay attention to take it in. This is cut across all special needs. Yeah, so even if you go, the first thing they want is the OT, occupational therapy, to calm them down. Musculatory to support especially the CP. After But then the teaching is that's what we're looking at. You have to have already, that's why assessment is important. Can they converse? Do they understand? When you say cap, can they repeat? You do the flashcard, can they take it in? That way you'll be able to know if they can actually understand. Yeah, because there are those ones who can, there are those who cannot, and there are those who can. I mean, they're flying an expert. I can introduce you to someone who's actually working, and they have CP. There are those whose speech is not perfect, but they can stand and speak and tell you what it is they want ETC, and they can move. So first of all, maybe we can try to just explain, then I see. But if any of you come here, learning does not have to be books. You can read for them. They will take it in. Show them pictures. Use tablets, technology. If the muscular tone for their hand is okay, use a tablet for them to trace. It doesn't have to be pen and paper, just be inventive, right? If it's sing along that they will use whatever it is, so long as they get. That's perspective. Then you say about epilepsy, that's the convulsion. First, whatever environment you have, let them be aware and which type of convulsions they get. Silent, active, all those ones, so that they can identify and also the first stage to it and to address it. And I hope you've seen a neurologist to guide, because you need the medication to tone it down so that it's manageable for them to be safe. Then you need to learn the triggers for the convulsions, because every person has a different trigger. If there's an aura, they can understand, but 5 is too early. Aura is something that comes to down before conversion starts. Not all of them, but if you create a code when they feel it coming, then you will be able to keep them in a safe environment. You know? Then when it comes, the assessment will come in handy. I think it's too early for education assessment. Then the challenge you have with school is accessibility if they're on a wheelchair, and then you have to also be very cautious of which wheelchair and sitting aids they're using, because it can be dangerous for them. And all this boils down to just having the correct assessment with the doctor. But then there are schools actually, even boarding schools. The problem is they're not many that can actually accommodate. And you will need, if they're actually trained or not, those are the things that actually make it very hard for someone to get a school. Because most of the time you're told you have to get a nanny to be staying with them in the class. So why people say disability, disabled people are poor? It's not that. Disability is very expensive, because all these things, well, someone else just put your child, for you have to think therapy, teacher, nanny, and all the other things that you require. Yeah, and the diapers, the special diets, the medication. So just focus on something and let it be progress. Don't rush them. Remember, take the child for who they are and not what you expect them to.
Okay. It feels like there is need for further conversation on that. So we are glad that the panelists made time to come. I know there was a question around, yes, just before that, there was a question around the resources and the kind of books and materials that we have. And I think I mentioned earlier that this is an area of interest for us as well, and it's an opportunity that we're willing to explore, and especially with these contacts that we've made. Having said that, we've got, flashcards, we've got art material, we've got other, touch and feel kind of books that are available in the children's section. So it's an area that you're also welcome to explore. But as you said, we are very interested and keen to bring more material that will be helpful to serve that community.
Sorry, on dyslexia, the degree also matters, but there are actually special needs teachers who focus on dyslexia. There are institutions, schools for dyslexia. The oldest we have is KCCL on Piccolo, that's Kenya Community Center for Learning, and there is another school also in Kitengela. So maybe same thing, you can see. We have support groups where all these things we discuss and get the best, or maybe it's homeschooling. We have that.
Excellent. I think we've answered the questions for the day. Is there any other burning question, comments? Or we can bring this session to a close. Sadly, I know the conversation has been very exciting. At this point, I have to recognize my CEO, Drew Shah. This way, you can come and say hello. Would you like to hear?
Good evening, everyone. Mine is to thank all of you for attending. This is our first TBC Connect, and I'm shocked as to how rich, positively shocked as to how rich the discussion was. And unfortunately, time is always a constraint, right? So 2 hours have flown by. Of course, to the panelists or speakers, thank you. Conversation was rich. And I must say, from my personal journey, I'm a product of a transition. I started my school life at Rosinga School, and then just as I think we've all had discussions, my parents, even way back in the early 90s, had the same debate. Local curriculum, international curriculum, and whatnot. So I did shift to Banda School and then Hillcrest. So a lot of what is said was really pertinent. And I also had a younger brother who was dyslexic as a child. So he was reading right to left, which I found really funny, but I didn't know that I was bullying him, right? And so what was said here is quite pertinent because he went to a special needs teacher who specifically identified his dyslexia. And within 5 or 6 years, he started reading left to right, which is a big change. But he's now a practicing dentist. So perhaps his dyslexia was milder than others, but it just went to show that the special needs that he got from his special needs teacher and from my parents in terms of not forcing him to do anything, but doing things at his own pace, what he enjoyed. And yeah, he's now a teacher, a dentist practicing on General Nethenge Road. So wherever we start off in life, whatever talents we have, I think they all just need to be nurtured. And the choice of school, choice of special needs, choice of syllabus, they're just choices. I really don't think there's a right and a wrong. Otherwise, different choices won't exist, right? So a lot of what was said perhaps should guide all of us as to how we need to think about our individual circumstances. And I think as Textbook Center, we also have to adapt. The CBC has been a huge change for us in understanding what learning materials we need to provide, not just in terms of books, but in terms of the touch, feel, see, learn. I've learned that modeling dough and modeling clay is a really big thing in CBC, and I'm intrigued to see as to how it's actually being used in schools and what the outcome is from a learning perspective. But any feedback we get, because we are also new to this curriculum and also to special needs or to the other syllabus, things change. So any feedback you can give us, we're here to act upon. And I would just urge perhaps for the panelists that if anyone does want to reach out for further conversations or guidance, then I would hope you make yourselves available as well. But thank you to everyone, and thanks to the team at TDC for organizing.
Thank you, Drew. As we bring this to a close, just as you look at this store, 75% of the store is dedicated to education books, both local and international, the different curriculums you had. So you don't have to fear too much. You're welcome to browse. IB, EdExcel, Cambridge, whatever it is, the resources are here. So you're welcome to browse at your own time. Please spread the word. We're here to help, we're here to advise, we're here to journey with you. And as you say, this is the inaugural TBC Connect, a platform for us to have conversations that matter. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A big applause to our panelists. Oh, yes. That Kenyan thing, you know those things that make us unique. Kenyan. Yes. Everybody can have a minute or two. Somebody should be 10 minutes for the final. Oh, it's election season, but I'd like a disclaimer. The views of the panelists are the individual views and not the views of the system. Yes, they did.
While all of us want the best for our children, and just to encourage us to know them, know your child, and just know what works for us and for that particular child. And in fact, you can take your children to 3 different schools. It's possible. Yeah, you can like say like 3 different schools. You can take your child to IT because this one seems like they can do better there. Take the other one to a CBC school and take the other one and homeschool the other. I mean, you should have that freedom because they are your children and not, have this one like that for all of them. They're so different, and you know too well that they're so different. And at the end of the day, what truly matters, like they have formed the child, as the child actually been formed to what they also have. And when they grow up, when you look at them into the eyes, you say, I think I did my best. Yeah, and I think for me that is the most important.
Wow. For any parent, any caregiver, any person who's giving support to a child with special needs, that is a child who should be looked at as a normal child. Don't compare them with the other children in terms of how I wish, how I wish, how I wish. That weighs you down. Once you accept and handle them as they come, the journey becomes easy. No school, or rather no curriculum, will give you the best for your child if she's in the spectrum or special child category, other than a parent. If the parent gives the best to the child with special needs, then that child shines. Because they normally come out with a special, like he said, as a dentist, some come out as doctors, some can come out as artists. They always have that special thing that they can offer. So it's about the parent nurturing from the workload. And once you master what you're supposed to do about the child, the journey is easy and very sweet. That's all I can say.
On my side, butterflies are favorite because they transition from that market to them beautiful. And all of them are different. There is no butterfly that looks like the other. And that's the logo of my foundation, my tattoo, it's my everything. And they relate that to the child, the special needs child. If they are in the right environment, you take them for who they are, you give them the right opportunity, they will blossom. So for you as a parent and a caregiver, see the able and not the label.
One of my favorite quotes used to be, some people are wise, others are otherwise. So for me, I'll end with a story just to emphasize what I was saying. Once upon a time when I was still a deputy head teacher at Oshun Academy, Ramadan was quite a trying time for us. Because it's a time when some very young children would start fasting and would come up with different excuses that they want to go home because it's overwhelming. So I took a precedented decision once that I'll fast with them. So one day this girl came, I said, sir, my head is aching, please call my mom. I said, why? I'm fasting. So I told her, I'm also fasting. So she looked at me and said, but you're Christian. I said, yes. Is there a place written that you cannot fast? So why would you fast? I said, so that I can keep you company up to the end. And that was the end of that conversation. She went and she never came back until the end of Ramadan. Then we had another conversation. And she said, son, did you fast? I said, yes. All the days. I said, yes. Why don't you become Muslim? And I said, that's interesting. Are you my friend? I asked her. I said, yes, I'm your friend. Why are you my friend? I said, you're a nice person. I said, you say nice person. You didn't say he's nice Christian. You didn't say nice Muslim. I'm a good person. And that is the basis of education. And the rule is right. The politicians, all this can be found in a book. Right? Called Perfect Score, Memoirs of a Teacher. This is 32 years journey stories, the first of its own. We're in the process of getting it into the stores. So yes, I'm happy to that through.
In a smart way. Give it to me.
Storyteller is a teacher, is always good. So his book is going to be available at Textbook Center with the end of the week, and I'm sure you're going to be organizing a book signing for him as well. Fantastic stories, fantastic from a fantastic person, just like every other person sitting on this panel today. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation with that short notice. We really appreciate it, and we are so grateful to now have you as part of our family, TBC family, part of our network, very individual network. And I'm sure we have lots of questions, we are just in awe of the kind of, just knowledge and how open you are even to share your own stories, because we know that comes from a deep place, and we really appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for making time this evening. We are bringing this session to a close, and as you said, TBC Connect is a monthly platform, a monthly session. We're going to have this platform is going to be held monthly. We're going to have different conversations, and this conversation can still continue on our social media handles, and I'm sure in other spaces where our marketing teams will be able to lead us. Each of us will get 10% discount on our next purchase of IGCSE books of whatever value. I'm seeing somebody clapping. Yes, so each of us will need to register. You'll register as you exit. Before you exit, you're welcome to a cup of tea and a bite. And this is a networking platform. Please leave here with new friends, with contacts, smiles on your faces. It's been a great discussion, great use of our 2 hours, and you cannot wait for the next one, right? Thank you very, very much, everybody. And good night.